The most extreme form of bereavement is parental bereavement, and I know firsthand of this pain after losing my baby girl Millie at only 6 days old, with no indication of complication prior to her birth. It came as a complete shock to us. We never got to see her eyes, we never got to hear her cry. As the weeks passed and we were riding the tsunami of grief, those around us expressed how useless they felt. They didn't know that we too felt so useless. We didn't even know what we needed, but I knew at that point I needed to speak out. From Millie's life and death, this podcast was birthed. Little Life, Big Loss, as a safe space to talk about baby loss, grief, trauma, heartache, and hope. A safe space for lost parents to share their stories of their real-life angels. A place for those nearest and dearest to learn about our journeys and to gain a deeper understanding in how to help those who are riding the tsunami of grief. Welcome to Little Life, Big Loss. Hello. Today I have a beautiful mama, Emma, all the way from Perth, joining us. Emma's going to be sharing her story of her little Ada. Again, I don't know a lot about her story, and that's the way I like it. I know she has 2 beautiful living babies here on Earth, and she has one in heaven. So we're going to hear from Emma today. Thank you so much for joining us. I never take this for granted. I'm really honoured. I'm going to cry already. I don't even know. I never take for granted the opportunity to speak with somebody about their babies. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. So it's special to talk about for sure.
Yeah. So I like to ask the question. We know that the day we lose a child, we change forever. Somebody actually said to me the other day, it's like the chemistry inside of you just changes instantly, and it does. So who was Emma before she lost Ada?
Oh, wow. Okay. Before I lost Ada, I was living my best life for sure. I had my first daughter, low risk pregnancy, a very straightforward birth. You know, all fit the plan. I fell pregnant when I wanted to. After I turned 30, I'd been on a big holiday. Work was great. We, had bought a new house, the family house. We had a puppy dog. Literally, everything was going along as I wanted to, and I was a bit of a control freak in that way. And it was pretty perfect. Decided when my daughter was 18 months old that we wanted to have another baby, and that's kind of when things kind of was veering off the path of what was a very good time in our lives.
Yeah. And so did you guys struggle to fall pregnant with Ada?
No. So I fortunately have never struggled to fall pregnant. I fell pregnant for the first time before my first daughter Lottie, but I had an early miscarriage, and it was shocking. It was totally off my radar, but because it was early and it was the first time and my personality type, I really rationalised it away and kind of lent into the whole, 1 in 4, this happens a lot, doesn't mean anything in terms of I can't have children or anything, it will be fine, I'll try again. Spoke to friends and although I was devastated and very upset for a while, I kind of pulled myself back up and was like, okay, I just got to get back onto it. Tried again straight away and fell pregnant with Lottie, and she was born and it was all great. And I kind of just put it to the back of my head that, that was my thing, that had happened and it was awful, and, we're past that now. So then when we decided to have another baby, again, planned it in terms of, this is the timing that I'd love, and, at the age gap that I wanted, and this is the right time, all that stupid shit that you think you've got control over. So again, fell pregnant first go. So no problems falling pregnant at this point. And yeah, we were so excited. everything felt right. It felt like the right timing. I was, used to be quite spiritual, and things happen for a reason, all that stuff. And the star signs were good, like my kids to be best friends, and just
oh wow.
all that bullshit, honestly. And it was my husband had kind of said, well, don't get too excited. Wait until we get a bit further along, and what can happen. And I just did not even listen. I was invested hard. And then I think I was about 7 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, 7 weeks, and I got a really weird virus. Was really unwell. Felt really off, really gross. Still didn't think it was anything to worry about. And I had some blood tests and things, and I had just weird results in my liver, all this weird stuff. Anyway, long story short, I ended up having another miscarriage, and this one was obviously a bit later, and just totally rocked me. I was, it sounds weird to say shocked, but I was so shocked because I just felt like all the signs were there that this was the baby. And it lasted a lot longer. It was a lot harder to get over, and I felt like every week was eating into my time and further ruining my plan and that control thing back then. Yeah. And just felt like it took ages for that to resolve before we could try again. And I was really sad and really upset for my daughter as well, and just kind of, all the things people feel, I guess, when that happens. This time I didn't wait a cycle, which I had previously. We launched straight back into trying and fell pregnant again.
Wow. Wow.
And so no problems falling pregnant. And that was my pregnancy with Ada. So again, that first trimester was completely different. I was very nervous and anxious, and the toilet checking and the worry at scans and all of that. But then true to form, we hit that 12, 13-week mark, and, everything's fucking dandy, right? My harmony tests were good, my, NIP tests, the scans were perfect, had a beautiful obstetrician, and his favourite word was perfect. He said it a lot.
Literally, I said that on my bonus podcast yesterday. We did a Q&A, and I literally said, every scan we went to, they'd be like, she's perfect. She's perfect. And it's
and that's the thing. We found out we were having a girl, and it was just all my dreams at once. I longed for a sister growing up, so it's my own emotional baggage. I've got an older brother, 5 years older, who has a disability. Love him, but didn't get to have that same sibling relationship. And I grew up in the country. All my cousins were not there, and I was a girly girl, and I just dreamt of having a sister. And to give my daughter a sister just felt like, and I already was like, oh yeah, I know, the age gap is going to be a few months more than I wanted.
Wow, I know.
But so excited to be having a girl. So that was amazing. And, started to buy all that Big Sister books and talk to my daughter. She was obsessed with babies, a real mother hen, even as a 2-year-old. And everything was going along the same as my first pregnancy. Had morning sickness for quite a while, and was taking something this time for it. I was working, but that was fine. Was having fairly regular scans and appointments. I had a good model of care, and just felt that we'd reached that point and everything was fine. I knew about the possibilities for I knew about stillbirth and those kinds of losses, I definitely had no idea of the spectrum of ways a baby can die.
Yeah.
And I think the shocking thing was, for me, is the ignorance that I had no idea that a healthy baby, a healthy mother, my assumption was if a baby dies, there's a reason. And like, that's not a hard thing for science and doctors to come to.
And you've done the scans, and you've done, like, when you do the scans and you do the nips and you do all that, you truly think you're having a healthy baby.
Yep. And your anatomy scans so detailed and on everything for the perfect measurements and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
All the things. So we then get into the third trimester, and we're starting to come out of winter and all the winter germs and all that stuff. And it was when COVID was ramping up all around Australia and lockdowns over east and everything. But in Perth, we were in this real little bubble where, we had the occasional lockdown if like one case came in or something, but it wasn't rampant. And, we were very lucky. And I remember feeling very lucky that, I was having a baby at this time in the world, but I lived in Perth and it wasn't here, and I was safe, my baby was safe. And I just felt really lucky about that. And, but, it was getting to that point where our borders being shut was a real big thing in Australia, and they were talking about reopening them. So they started the conversation about vaccinations and all that jazz. And, me, I'm an advocate for science and very much on that page. And so I wanted to do all the right things. So, I went along and had my vaccinations, had my whooping cough. Like, we're at the sticky end, getting to the sticky end of pregnancy. But, yeah, just feeling privileged to have access to that and to be somewhere where, everyone was doing pretty well. Went down south on a holiday with friends for a weekend. It was wonderful. Everyone was really excited, so much patting your belly, all that, whatever. Came back up to Perth, and it was like a 4-hour drive, and I had a really sore back that week. And I have a sore back regularly, so I didn't think anything of it really.
How many weeks would you have been at this point?
So nearly 32, and I kind of had bed rest for like 3 or 4 days, and it's all a bit blurry. But by the end of the week, my back has started to come good. But in hindsight, I can't pinpoint it because I think it's all like related to the trauma, I guess. But I don't know if it was the night before, if it was 2 nights before, but I definitely know I had a night because I remember commenting, we were trying to watch a movie, and I had that real flurry of activity that I've heard other people talk about, where it was like unusually crazy. And she was really active anyway, both my girls were, but this was like really active. And I was like having to flip around and move and keep changing position and being like, oh gosh, she's really going for it in there tonight, like having a party, which, made me sick to my stomach to learn later that increased movement is, potentially a warning sign as well. And
that's such a good point to really emphasize there, because a lot of people talk about reduced movements and not a lot of people talk about increased movements. And, yeah, like a sharp jolt or a sharp kick or punch, like was in Crystal's episode the other day. And, yeah, increased movements. Any change in movement is what they say is worth investigating.
And I definitely did not know that. I mean, this is my second pregnancy. I'd never heard that for sure. And so I was feeling a lot better, and it was a Sunday where, I guess you have that day that your life, as you know it, changes forever. And woke up, perfectly normal, average Sunday. We had breakfast plans with friends, my daughter, our favourite cafe, that I didn't go back to for like a year.
Yeah.
Had a beautiful breakfast, went and played in the playground, completely oblivious. She was already dead at this point. I had no idea. It was busy. It was a busy day. At the playground, came home, my toddler's crazy. I wanted to have a nap, but didn't. And I feel like if I had I would have known then something was wrong, but we were busy. Went to the grocery store, decided tonight was the night we were going to make homemade pizzas with our daughter. Had never done that before. Never made homemade pizzas again, never will. It was a really nice day. That's the fucking thing. It was just a nice day. Made our pizzas, took photos, never looked at them. I was obviously very big at this point, and so to read my daughter a bedtime story, I'd put her in the cot and sit on a stool next to her. And I was reading it, and it was as I was reading it, I just had this wave of I can only explain it as doom, dread of that pit in your stomach you get when you think you've lost something, right? And you just know that, it's gone forever. I wasn't obviously thinking that of my baby, but that feeling of something's very wrong.
Something's wrong, yeah.
Something's really wrong. What's this feeling? Why am I feeling this? I'm reading this book. I started to rub my tummy. I couldn't feel her move. And I couldn't remember when she had moved. That was my thing. I was like, when did I feel her at lunchtime? Did I feel her this morning? It was, my brain was racing. Finished the book, said goodnight, was walking back out to the kitchen, and my husband turned and looked at me, and my face just he instantly was like, oh, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I think I just literally burst into tears straight away. I was just, I haven't felt her move. She's not moving. I'll go sit down and, have a drink and, whatever you think you heard. I probably only did that for 30 seconds before I decided I'd call the hospital, and the lady who answered was really lovely, and I started crying immediately as I was talking to her, your intuition.
Oh, and that's what I'm feeling. I'm your intuition just knew,
something was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you try and ignore it because you think, no, you're just being hyper aware and whatever. But, this is 7:30 at night. My daughter's asleep now. They said come in. So we then had to call my mother-in-law and my father-in-law to come over and watch our toddler. They're in their pajamas. It's a Sunday night, feeling such an inconvenience. They turn up and happy to do so, but you feel like you're being neurotic or whatever.
Yeah, and you're second guessing, it's just reduced movements. Am I being silly?
Baby's asleep, or my husband wasn't really that worried. He's like, we'll just go in for peace of mind.
Yeah.
And so we're driving there in silence, complete silence. And, I had my hand on my tummy the whole time, and it's a 20-minute drive. She just wasn't moving. And I got to the hospital, walked in. It was a really quiet night, which is so weird for a maternity, suite, right? But I felt like I saw this midwife as we walked in, and she took us straight in. She was lovely. I think this is where most of my trauma comes from, is that second pregnancy, my husband hadn't been to any appointments besides a 20-week scan in this pregnancy. And I'm up on the bed, and she gets out the Doppler and, is struggling and doing the whole, this happens, and baby's just probably in a strange position and just being all really nice. And, I am freaking out, trying to be calm, but, feeling nearly out of body already. And it goes on, and then eventually, after I don't know how long, she finds a heartbeat. And my husband like audibly sighed and was like, oh, see, it's all good. But like, she didn't say anything, and I knew that's not what it sounds like, and I knew that was my heartbeat.
Oh, fuck.
I knew that. He had no idea. She wasn't saying anything, and I couldn't say anything, and all she said was, I will just go and get a doctor and we'll do an ultrasound.
Fuck. She knew?
Yeah, for sure. She couldn't.
She just couldn't.
And I think they have, initially, I now know that they have a protocol they have to follow in that they do a Doppler, then the doctor does an ultrasound. Even that doctor can't really give the news. They have to go get the OB, and then it's like a stages of checks before they tell you. And so she disappears. My husband's still like noticeably relieved. I'm like crying at this point. I guess he doesn't really know why. Doctor comes back and does an ultrasound, but I can't see the screen. And then same thing, she says, I've just got to go get someone else. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Yeah, fuck. And then obstetrician came on, not my OB, he wasn't on. It was another obstetrician who, was an angel on earth. And yeah, she turned the screen to us, and it's just still, there's just no movement, there's no blood flow, and all she said was, I'm so sorry. She didn't even have to finish the sentence. It was just, I'm so sorry. And I've heard of people who say that they have no sound or whatever. Like, I was guttural. I was like an animal. I screamed so loud, and my husband straight away tried to like contain it. And I just remember the midwife, the two doctors, they all grabbed my husband to try and like hold him and like said like let her, let her.
Yeah.
And I just don't even remember much more besides just feeling like, and it's so cliche, but feeling like I must have been in a nightmare and I was going to wake up.
Yeah.
And it was obviously getting late by this point, and we forgot that his parents were at our house with our baby, with our toddler, and we've never spoken about it, men like this part, because men just grieve so differently, and I suppose it's more his trauma than mine, but he had to go and make those phone calls to his parents because they had our daughter. I had to. Someone called my mum again. Had to, because I told her I was going in. My dad was working away, and I was like, there's no way I'm telling my dad on a Sunday night when he's a million miles away. So yeah, the act of having to tell people is like so traumatic, right? And like my daughter, just thinking about my daughter, and yeah, it was just like, how, like why, how? I don't even know if I was thinking that at that point. It was just pure trauma, shock, and then that realization. And I did know. This is the weird thing. Like I kind of knew what had to happen next, because this is going to sound really bizarre, but 18 months earlier, one of my best friends lost a baby. Like literally my best friend for like 25 years. She lost a baby at 29 weeks. It was horrifically traumatic for all of us. He had a genetic abnormality and a heart issue. And, so I had learned a lot through her experience, and I was so affected by it to the degree that, people thought it was, not people like my husband, people were worried about me taking it on emotionally. But it's like, that was preparing me for it's so bad. It's so weird.
Yeah.
Obviously, I reflect back on my support for her and you know, have learned so much of how I could have been a better friend, but I truly did my best. And
of course,
at the time I bought her a book because I thought that was the right thing to do, and that's kind of what I would want. And when I went to give it to her, she just wasn't ready for that kind of thing, and she said, no, I can't, like, you know, the point in her grief, she wasn't ready for that. And so I kept it and I read it. It was Miles Park by Annabelle Bauer. I don't know if you've heard of it. She's an Aussie.
I actually have it, but I haven't read it yet.
Haven't read it, yeah. So I read that before I was any of this. And if I hadn't, you know, I would have been totally blind. But it was still completely confronting, obviously, to know you've got to give birth.
Absolutely. To your babies. Yeah. Yeah. That's what one of the other girls, that Ashley, who I interviewed the other week, she said she's always had, her biggest fear is death, and she had to go home, and she said, I remember showering and knowing that I had death inside of me. That was her words. And I was like, wow, like that is...
Yeah, that was the same. So we got sent home at like 11.
Oh, you did?
And told to come back first thing. Because, you know, we had to sort out our daughter and, you know, so went home and, yeah, same thing, had a shower. And I think the shower became this really triggering place for me because every time I stepped into it, all I could think of was, yeah, standing there, hot shower, this huge belly. And, you know, occasionally you'd think you felt something, but, you know, you still have all your amniotic fluid and your baby's still... you know, moving around and they're kind of like floating and you still get sensations. But, you know, you just can't believe. It's very hard to believe. And like they gave us sleeping pills and gave us all these things. I remember being really, really furious. I forget who said it, and I know she didn't mean anything by it, but I remember her saying, you know, go home and like do whatever you need to do, you know, take these pills and, you know, have a bottle of wine if you need, like you can now. And I know she didn't.
Fuck up.
Yeah, I know. She.
Yeah, no thanks.
At the time, it was like awful, but like I know it was just something that tumbled out. But like the last thing I wanted to do was fucking have a drink when I was pregnant.
My baby is still in. Yeah, no, sorry.
Like you know, you're still pregnant, but you're not. You know, it felt weird to even take the sleeping pill, but like I knew I had to, you know, go into labour the next morning. I don't think either of us really slept anyway. And then, yeah, to wake up in the morning and have my beautiful little 2.5-year-old bounding and oblivious and hug me and, like, kiss my tummy and, you know, totally unaware of what's happened and trying to, like, not lose your shit around her. And I dropped her off at our parents and drove her to the hospital. You know, hastily packed. Baby
so
bag.
fucked up.
So fucked up. We weren't ready at all.
Yeah.
And yeah, started the induction, I guess.
Why do they send you home at that point? Like this is a common thing in people's stories, and I just. We were lucky. I've met numerous mothers who had to wait days and days. Yeah. One mother here, maybe 6 months after me, was made to wait 4 or 5 days, and she got an infection. Fucking go figure. Because you've got it. It's so wrong. It's so fucked. It's so like, I know that. I think because it was late and they probably just didn't have things prepared. I think they, in our case, fortunately, you know, they want to put you in a specific birth suite so you're as far away as possible from live babies and
happiness and joy and all that, you know. So anyway, we went in and it was just bizarre. You just feel like it can't be real what's happening. But I was in labour most of the day. Eventually had an epidural. It just felt like it took forever. I couldn't even listen to music. Like, I'm a old me, very much into music and enjoy music and all that. But it's like anything that had any kind of emotional response from me, I couldn't. I needed silence. I didn't want people cracking jokes or smiling or...
Absolutely not.
Not that I could vocalise that, but I remember just sitting there and just trying to stay calm and steeling myself like, you know, you have no choice. You have to do this. This has to be done. So I can find a way. And because your baby's not working with you, right? Like in a normal labour.
Okay.
Because, so it can be a lot slower. So, yeah.
Do they do anything to assist that? I haven't heard that before.
They just really ramp up the induction, like the drugs, I think. Like when you have an induction with a live baby, like you've got monitors on and they've got to be really careful with the balance of that stimulation, I guess, so that baby doesn't go into distress or, you know. So it's like really closely monitored, but I guess when your baby's died, they can just, you know, ramp it up. And I'd had an epidural, so, you know, it's just...
And because they say that an induction is more painful and faster and all the rest of it, so I guess if they're ramping it up, it's...
Yeah, and they kind of have to in that case. So I went from, after I had the epidural, I was able to have some rest, and I think my husband had literally, they just wheeled in like a bit of a floor bed for him to have a rest because he was shattered. Have I lost you?
No.
He probably just closed his eyes, and a midwife had just come in for checks, and I sat up and I was like, no, she's coming right now. And the midwife was like, oh, okay, I'll just go get the doctor. I was like, no, she's coming. She's like, oh, okay, I'll check how far you are. And like as soon as she checked, like the head was there, like she was ready. I knew she was.
You're happening. Like, listen to me.
It's happening. And it was literally like compared to my first birth, it was only like a few pushes, and she was born, and it was, you know, the same huge emotional release that you have for your baby, regardless of anything, and but terrifying as well. I didn't know that's right. So I'd been told earlier. I had a midwife gently say to me, now, you know, I just need to prepare you that, you know, she's passed, so. You know, there's a potential, just so you're aware, that when your waters break, you know, they could be quite dark, because often if a baby's in distress, they will, you know, poo in utero, like the meconium or whatever. So, you know, your waters might be dark. I don't want that to alarm you if that happens, and like a few other things that they've said. And, you know, obviously at that point, no one knew if there was, you know, any birth defects that had happened, or, you know, genetic conditions, even though, you know, all our stuff had been fine so far. But anyway, when she was born, my waters broke at the same time, and they were perfectly clear. She was perfect. My placenta was big, healthy. There was no knots in her cord. There was no apparent anything. She was a really good size for, you know, being earlier, you know, and she was just beautiful.
So what?
That's, yeah.
So what
that's
was
the horror?
There's no cause.
No. So You know, they had a perinatal specialist there ready, perinatal loss specialist to like observe the placenta. We opted for the full autopsy. Again, that part of me saying, you know, we need to know why, you know, this will help other people. You know, no one wants to give approval for an autopsy for their baby. Like, when it comes down to it, you don't want to do that. But we did. We, you know, had like a shit ton of blood taken from me to test for like everything possible. We did full genetic carrier comprehensive screening. It was like $1,600 to see if there was anything that we passed on unknowingly. And just nothing. And so we waited a few months for that before trying, you know, I wanted
because
to have
then, what about for my next child? You know, you're scared to fall pregnant again. Yeah.
Like, how do you prevent something when you don't know what it is?
Oh.
And that, I think, is what ruined me for so long, was the not knowing. It doesn't correlate with my personality type. And all you can do is blame yourself, really, because at the end of the day, if there's nothing anyone else can find and that baby was in your body and they died in your body, like, what are you supposed to do besides feel insanely guilty and question everything you did? And I had really intrusive nightmares for a long time, like all these little things I did in that week prior that just wrecked me, and some were completely irrational. And even though I knew they were irrational, I still felt intensely guilty and shameful. And then others, you know, were still probably quite irrational, or at least I had my doctor saying, no, that's not why, and it's nothing you did, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And, yeah, I guess, you know, I held her on my chest for, it was late again. She was born at 8:18 p.m. And she stayed on my chest, skin to skin, for probably just over 2 hours before... you know, again, a midwife, we're beautiful midwives, came in and, you know, gently kind of said that I needed to get cleaned up. And, you know, you just completely forget about that. And, you know, handing her over was, it's just a constant feeling of loss, right? Like every stage, every step.
Yeah.
Is, you know, is more loss and more grief. And they wheeled me off to have a shower, and I don't know why they did this, but I felt like it was like a junior nurse or maybe someone that took me for this shower. I don't feel like she'd been in the room for the birth, and I'd had the same people in there like for like the 24 hours, and this girl wasn't. And so that was probably not ideal. I was a bit vulnerable at this point, obviously naked, having a shower. And I remember saying to someone, I just sobbed the whole time in the shower. Poor thing, she just probably she didn't say anything, and she wouldn't have known what the fuck to say. But, you know, you're looking down and seeing everything wash away. But, like, that's your daughter, that's your baby. And that's how it felt. It just felt like everything was washing away, everything I dreamt of, everything I'd imagined, just, was gone. Just, you know, blink of an eye. So, yeah, and then it's at the beginning of the end, right? You start your grief journey.
Yeah.
And
so did you see her again after that? Did you have the opportunity to spend more time with her? Yeah.
Yeah. Went back to the room, and they'd, like, you know, cleaned her up and dressed her. Unbeknownst to me, they'd taken a whole heap of photos of her at that point. because it was late at night, and I suppose that's the sadness I have too. The next morning we did have Heartfelt come and take photos, and I said no, and she still came, and then I said no again. It's just that mama instinct of like protecting them. It was so wild to me that anyone would be taking photos, and like thank God they encouraged me, and she actually came in and was like reassuring me that she could get some beautiful photos, and I was like okay. And then as she was setting up, my mother and father-in-law arrived with my daughter. And you know, they talk about the worst day being when your baby dies, but equally the worst day was, you know, telling my daughter that her sister had died. And she wasn't obviously comprehending fully. And we brought Ada in, and she was wrapped in blankets, had a little beanie on, and I said all the wrong things, you know, said she was sleeping, and, you know, all very fucking confusing for a toddler. And all she wanted was to hold her. And we did, and, you know, she was smiling and, you know, touching and stroking, but noticeably could feel the tension in the room, had some kind of understanding that this wasn't right. Something was very wrong, and it's like she was just trying to make everyone smile. And we got some really beautiful photos with her and Ada, and I'm so grateful to have them. And
me too. When you said
met.
no, I thought, oh shit, like you know, like oh, it's So
and
I know in that. I say it all the time. In that moment, the idea of photos and photographers feels so weird, but it is my greatest treasure. My heartfelt photos, and I just scream it from the rooftops because I just need everyone to know that. Like that, totally. In the moment, they said to me, "If you feel uncomfortable, you can tell her to go." I'm so glad you got that.
Yeah, one of my biggest regrets is I don't have any video. That was like the line I drew was, I think my mum tried to take a video when she was just born, and I like screamed at her. And like I don't know where that came from, but it's just this thing. And I wish I had videos. But yeah, it's so important. It was so important that my daughter met her, because she has those photos. She looks at them all the time. For months, she slept with a photo of Ada under her pillow. You know, she has a photo book. She has, you know, all her own special things, books, like her grief journey. She continues to evolve as she gets older. And
it will forever. Like, you know, she will always miss her little sister. And
I think that was one of the hardest things. Like, I've obviously met so many mums. It's been over 2 years now. Probably equal parts mums who had living children and mums who lost their firstborn, and you know, they're both fucked up situations, and they both have their own unique challenges. And I think for those who have living children, that grief, like my grief was big and like loud and full on and uncontrollable and messy, and you know, I was constantly worried that I was like damaging Lottie with it. But she's so empathetic now, and has such compassion for other people, and like I have that hindsight now, but at the time, like, it's just another thing that you're beating yourself up about and worried about.
For sure. I say it all the time because I don't have living children, and I was able to just grieve in all of the mess on my own, and I didn't have to get up and parent each day. I didn't have to worry that I was damaging my child. And I hate the saying, like, people say it, at least they have other kids. No, it just adds, I've said this in so many podcasts, it just adds another element of complexity. Like, you have to explain it to that child. You have to help them through their grief journey. You have to wake up and be there for them, you know.
And she would ask for I don't know how long it went on, 6 months more, I don't know. You know, she knew what had happened and we talked about it all the time, but she'd always ask, you know, is Ada back in your belly, or is Ada coming back? So we called her Ada months before she was born. So Lottie had already connected to her name as well. So that I think was helpful too. But yeah, just the conversations are so heartbreaking and bittersweet. I mean, you love that they're talking about them and thinking about them, but it's also, so hard, and everything I'd imagined. And that, as you know, as soon as you're pregnant, you imagine this whole life. You know, I imagined Christmas with them both, and I had that all mapped out. I had the matching outfits. I had the plans. I had the holidays. I imagined them playing at the beach together, sharing a room together. Like you as a woman, like that's how I fell asleep every night. Yeah. I fell asleep every night dreaming what my life was going to look like with my daughters. You know, I wrote their names together and I loved how they looked together. Yeah. I wrote our family names. Yeah. I, had the nursery done, and Lottie had her big bedroom made and ready, which, was ready. I didn't let her move into it for another fucking 12 months. After Ada died, I was like, fuck, I don't care how old you are not coming out of that cot.
Yeah.
I'm not having an empty cot. And, it killed me thinking of people who'd had their first baby with that nursery ready, with it being empty. It's just like fucked.
I know everyone thinks I'm crazy for doing the podcast, and it's only been 4 months, but I get to sit in the nursery every day to record podcasts, and it's just like my thing. It just means like to be closer to her.
You know what? That's what I used to do. I used to sit in the nursing chair, and that's where I would cry, and I would hold whatever I could hold. You just had that biological need, or I did. Like my arms felt physically heavy and empty. Like, you hear empty arms, right? Like I had no idea how physical grief was, how heavy my body was, how weighted down. I could just like melt into the floor. Yeah. And it was just so exhausting.
And your heart physically hurts. Like it's like I have this. Like it really hurts. Like I was saying to my sister, like I just, and it does lighten. It's only been 4 months, and I'm definitely not saying I'm okay, but I'm like that real fucking deep heaviness in those first couple of weeks, especially, even first couple of months, probably before we went to the US or even while we were still there. But I was just like my chest and my heart constantly hurt. Yeah. Like, and I just...
Yeah. And I was that took me by surprise, like, which is so many things had such new meaning after that. Like, when you say it's painful, it's like it is painful. It's like, obviously you have all the mental anguish, but that physical pain was full on. And I remember I bought because of it. There's a lady, I think she's in Queensland, who makes these beautiful crochet weighted dolls. She makes them to your baby's length and weight.
Is it floppy? I'm looking for a floppy one.
So the body is where the weight is, but the arms and the head are floppy.
You'll have to send me the details.
I will. I didn't even tell my husband that I was doing it because
you feel crazy, right?
Yeah, felt fucking crazy.
I really want one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I tell you, as soon as my daughter went to daycare and my husband went to work, she was in bed with me, and I would just hold her and cuddle her. I'd sit in a nursing chair with her, like just to have the weight. Yeah. Just to have the weight in my arms. Sometimes I'd hold my daughter's doll. I often dressed my daughter's doll in one of her onesies.
Oh, bless.
And just talk about it to anyone else. You sound like a psycho. But, lost mums get it.
Yeah.
So if anyone's doing that, thinking about doing that, you're not crazy.
I've heard of the weighted bears, and the ones I've seen, they're like in the UK or the US, and they're so expensive to get here because they weigh, a couple of kilos. And then a couple of Aussie ones I found are all like quite firm, and I was like, no, she was floppy, and I want my little floppy girl on my chest.
The name's escaping me, but I'll send it to you. So the bodies, I can send you a picture as well. But I thought.
And do you love it? Is
cute.
it? Yeah,
I do.
You do
I
love
still
it.
Love her.
I
still love her. I haven't pulled her out as much now, but like I know she's there and she's in a special spot. And when I need that moment, it's important, especially in that time. That first year for me was horrendous. Pregnancy after loss. Literally just the hardest thing, besides obviously Ada dying, the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, so how long after Ada passing did you fall pregnant?
So I started trying basically right on like the 3-month mark, once we got all those investigations back, which told us fucking nothing. I
can't believe that. What is your... I want to go back for a second, because I remember at the time you saying like you had irrational thoughts and then some not... What's your gut saying?
I don't even have a gut feeling. I mean, I really took a deep dive into Dr. Kilman's research around the placenta. I don't know if you've read any of that. It's over in the US, and a lot of stillbirths that can be attributed back to the placenta in some way, like blood clots or things like that. And because I just had my... Again, I'm not an anti-vax. Let's just clear that up. But I had just had my vaccination.
Yeah.
And there was evidence of, obviously COVID having issues with the placenta. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of research around whether the vaccinations had issues with placenta. But again, in my autopsy, they didn't find any blood clots.
Wow.
So my doctor was like, look, no, it's highly, highly unlikely that had anything to do with it. It's just coincidental, and that sucks. And then because I'd had a sore back, I was, had these really awful, graphic, horrendous dreams about the fact that I'd used like a heat pack and, things like that. But, I know I was cautious with it. I know I didn't have it in the wrong spot or like for long, but at the time your brain just goes
I can only imagine
into these awful spots. I kind of lost the plot a bit, thinking like, did I take like Nurofen instead of Panadol, or like did I take this instead of that? Like I didn't. But
poor thing.
You're clutching. Did I lay on my wrong side? And like stop the airflow for that split. Like who fucking knows, right? It's just cruel. I've spoken to lots of people about this, and at the time I was super jealous, envious, jealous. I don't know what the right word is. One of those ugly thoughts of people who got a reason, people who had a clear reason. That meant that they could do preventative things in a future pregnancy or some kind of surveillance. Some people get reasons and they still don't get that. It can't, like a placental abruption. There's just nothing you can do to like necessarily prevent that. So that's really scary as well. But over time I was able to like step out of myself and realise that even with a reason, at the end of the day, your baby's still dead. And like, why did that happen? You still don't know why me. Like that still sucks, of course. But I just wanted something that I could do differently, so my next pregnancy didn't feel like Groundhog Day, deja vu, which it did anyway. But I stayed with my same obstetrician because he's just an angel on earth for sure. And had really good care in my next pregnancy. He saw me fortnightly from the minute I got a pregnancy test, positive test. I had a scan every time. As soon as I hit maybe 28 weeks or less, I saw someone weekly. I never had a Doppler my entire pregnancy.
Yeah.
refused, only ever had ultrasounds. And I know some people have scan and anxiety, but for me,
Yeah.
the Doppler, even if I sat in the waiting room and could hear the Doppler and hear a heartbeat from another room, like I would start crying. So I was never going to have a home Doppler.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Whereas I know some people, they want that. They want to be able to check on baby.
Well, they say that the home Dopplers aren't that trustworthy anyway. They're not recommended because then you can freak out if you don't hear it.
Yeah.
I had 3 scares where they where I went in with reduced movements, and on the last one it took her 30 minutes to find her heartbeat, and she kept using the Doppler, and it was just in my checkup, and then she's like, oh, we'll take you into the other room and check it soon. We'll just do the finish your appointment. So we have the conversation like a normal checkup. And then she goes, okay, see you later. And I said, oh, are we going to go into the room? Like, we couldn't really find a heartbeat before. Can we go into the room? She's like, oh, yeah. So we go into another room, uses the Doppler, still couldn't find it. She's like, I'm going to get a machine. And she's like, I'm not going to let you leave till we find a heartbeat. I was like, thank you. And then they found it. But it was like, part of me always looks back to that and is like, you know, was she struggling at that point? But then, you know,
why was it so hard?
Why? And every time I had a midwife appointment, they always struggled to find her heartbeat. And they'd always be like, are you sure she's breech? I can feel her head down here. And I'm like, I just had a scan with the OB yesterday. She's 100% breech. Oh, this feels like her head. And it's really strange that I can feel her heart from here, because usually you can only hear the heartbeat from through the shoulder, they say. And they could never get it from up here. They could always only get it down. Like, just loads of little things like that.
But you look back on and you're like, yeah. I mean, my obstetrician, whether he was saying this just to like help me, and it did really help, but I don't know how much merit it really has. But at the time, at one of my appointments where I was just a complete mess, because this is my thing after Ada, he still continued to see me fortnightly, then monthly, until I fell pregnant. So I wasn't even a patient. I wasn't pregnant. And he insisted that I still come in and see him regularly and have that check-in, and that support was just so needed.
Yeah.
And he said to me, look, because I'd seen him a few days prior and everything was fine as well. And he's like, even if you'd come in the day before, like, everything that I've seen and the fact that her waters were clear and, you know, that we didn't find anything, like whatever's happened has happened very quickly. It's happened really suddenly, and there's nothing you could have done, you know, short of being hooked up to monitoring 24/7, which, yes, I would do that next time, you know, if there was a next time.
Right.
You know, he was very reassuring that, you know, she didn't suffer because it happened quickly. But as I say, who knows, really, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, just so much guilt. I can show myself a lot more self-compassion now. I've done a lot of work, I've done a lot of therapy, lots of therapy. But at the time, you're like, how could I not have known? Like, that's that, you know, intuition. Well, if I've got intuition, why the fuck did I not know something was wrong until she was dead? And hours later, like all day, like when she was born, their best guess was that she must have passed Saturday night or early Sunday morning, and I've not realised until Sunday afternoon.
Fuck.
And
that is awful. That is an awful amount of guilt to carry, and it's, you know, so valid that you felt that way. Like, it's not fair, and it's just shit.
Yeah, it's so shit. Like, you feel like the world's worst mother for it to happen, A, and then B, for it to happen and you don't know. And like, normally she's so active in the morning, like that's the time I feel her a lot. And I just can't remember, which makes me feel like she didn't. And we were just in a rush to get up, get ready, get to our breakfast date. And
which, as would everybody else be, you know.
Didn't lay in, you know. A normal Sunday I would have laid in. But probably would have been too late anyway. So night times became really triggering as well. Night times were really triggering when I was pregnant, because it was always like, well, you know, I have to go to sleep. Is my baby going to be alive when I wake up? So, like, if anyone wants a sugar-coated version of pow, you know, look away now,
Yeah.
it's fucked.
I know.
I mean, lots of people would deal with it probably better than me, but every single day was such a struggle. You know, in early grief, it feels like that, right? Like you just have to get through each hour, half a day, get through a day. Like it's just survival. Well, that was POW. So that's like 10 months of just get through this day, make it through this night. You know, tomorrow's another day. I'm still pregnant. Okay, tomorrow's a new day. I'm still pregnant. And it's just so exhausting. And oh my God.
PAL, for anyone listening that doesn't know, is pregnancy after loss. So PAL, pregnancy after loss. And like you had miscarriages as well. So you had loss, you had pregnancy after loss, and then pregnancy after baby loss is just a whole other ball game.
And I have a lot of compassion for women who experience miscarriage or like recurrent miscarriage. Like loss is loss. IVF loss, you know, I have a friend who's never made it to pregnancy, a pregnancy test, but she has still experienced loss, like losing embryos.
My friend too. I need to find the fan and find my remote and put the fan on. I'm sweating in here.
No worries.
I can't find it. I'm fine. It's like about 40 degrees in Queensland today.
Yeah, we're in a heat wave as well, but I've got the aircon.
Smart. Yeah, no, I have a friend also. She's 7 years in, 6 rounds of IVF and not a single pregnancy test. And that's what Dylan says as well. He's, you know, she messages us like every day with her heartache for us, and we're like, we ache for you as well. You know, she just yearns to carry a baby and yearns to hold one. And people say, oh, why doesn't she get a surrogate? It's like, yes, that's an option down the track, but she wants to hold her baby. You know, she wants to carry her baby. And I know that feeling. I just yearned to be pregnant. I really wanted that. And I am open to all the things if we ever needed it. But that's if that's your instinct and that's what you want and what you yearn for, like, we deserve that.
Yeah, and people are so quick to offer those things.
What about this? What about
this?
Just and
like it's so easy, and like that's not either. Like that surrogate has the same risks, right? And you have anyway, a whole other conversation. But for me, obviously, having gone through the two, like I can't. There's no comparison with those experiences to Ada's experience. Because I was just a different person. I had a different mindset. And as I say, as women, I think we're really good or bad, however you look at it, of rationalising things, of trying to make them okay in our brain so you can carry on and keep trying. I very much did that with the miscarriages, even the second one, which I found really, really awful. It was still like, well, you know, this is what we want. We want to have a baby. We just got to work through it. And you gaslight yourself a bit, like, you know, don't you've got to move on from it and not be stressed, like that's going to affect you more with getting pregnant again, like you know, push it away. Whereas like none of that works. When you lose your baby, I thought I was a resilient person, but like nothing prepared me for that level of grief and pain, and it's just like a bomb completely went off in my life. I couldn't think straight, couldn't eat, I couldn't smile. I was like offended by people who could. If anyone tried to distract me from my grief, like, again, that felt offensive to Ada and her memory. I had a lot of people try and do that, family, like, you know, we'll take you out and just get your mind off things. Totally meaning well, but I was just like,
I don't want to get my mind off it, or my mind, even if we got sent to the US. We literally went to the USA for 3 weeks. My grief followed me. Like, we had moments of joy, for sure. But my postpartum hair loss followed me. My first period IUD followed me. My missing Millie every minute of the day followed me. Like, it doesn't matter where you go. It never leaves you.
And that's it. It just was like an offensive suggestion to me. Like, I don't want to be distracted. I want my baby. The least I can do is think of her every second of the day. You know, and you're just going through the motions with everything else. And, you know, my husband was amazing, even though I probably didn't appreciate it at the time, because grief is selfish. As much as you might think it's not, or you're not a selfish person, or you don't want to be selfish, you're so consumed by it that in those early stages, you're surviving. So you have to be selfish just to get through the day. And, you know, he did all the daycare drop-offs. I couldn't go to daycare. I couldn't go anywhere that someone knew that I was pregnant. The fear around someone asking me how my baby was, or where my baby was, or congratulating me on my baby, like, that was terrifying to me. And I hid in my house for a long time. Wow. I couldn't go to the park, couldn't go to a cafe. I didn't go to any of when I did start going to parks or cafes, we drove out of area. I just couldn't face it. They were all spaces I had imagined my daughter being in with me. Oh, that took a long time. So I've slowly ticked them off now. I've gone back to most of them. It helped once Otis arrived.
Okay. I was going to say it probably helped once you went as well. It's like those first, like your first day back at work and your first day going somewhere. Yeah. It's like once you tick them off, it's like, whew, okay, I survived that but I didn't.
Yeah. And it's a hard one for me. I've spent a bit of time trying to figure it out whether the space I'm in now is a reflection of perspective and time having passed, or I know it's both, but I do wonder, like, how much of it is that, or how much of it is having my baby born after loss make it and be here and be alive and be thriving. And because obviously that was a huge turning point, bringing him home, and things got so much easier after that. And sometimes I'm hesitant to talk about it or share that, with compassion for those who aren't there yet, or compassion for those who have decided that's not their path or have had that choice taken away from them. Like, of course, you can go on to still have a really meaningful, beautiful life without going through PAL and having another baby. But obviously, in my situation, I'm very privileged to have that opportunity, and I desperately wanted it. If I could have been pregnant leaving the hospital, I would have been. I was like obsessive. It took longer to fall pregnant this time. I was sure I would miscarry first because that felt like my pattern. So first trimester was like, you know, I had many, many scares where I was sure that I was going to go to the toilet and find blood. I'd get up in the night frequently in a flurry. And then, it just never got easier. Every trimester has different fears, right? You know, you've got your big scans in your second, and then third trimester was just a complete mess. Obviously wasn't planned, but the way it worked out was that I was following the same timeline as Ada's pregnancy.
Yeah, fuck.
So I was the same gestation for Ada's first birthday that I was when she died. So we kind of had Ada's birthday followed by like being the same gestation, followed by like a funeral dates, followed by like, you know, like just things happening the same way. And so it was so really hard. And then straight into like Baby Loss Awareness Month. It's just all but I'm in a pretty good place at the moment, which is nice.
Yeah.
In a journey. that's your goal or your plan is obviously to fall pregnant again and bring that baby home. And like, I don't like using the word because I say this with the full understanding there's no guarantees. But obviously, if you are privileged to reach that point and take that baby home and have them in your arms, then yes, it is worth every painful, awful bit of heartache. But that's like really hard to see in the moment. But, and I would never tell someone, stupid things like, don't give up and like it will happen for you, like
because we don't know. I feel it in my core. I always felt in my core that I would be pregnant. Like when I got diagnosed with the endometriosis, and I had friends reaching out, if you need a surrogate, I'm here. And I'm like, that's beautiful, thank you, but I'm sure I'm going to carry my own babies. And I did carry Millie, and I got full term with her, and I got 6 days with her, and I have no doubt we will. Obviously the headspace I'm in now says that. A couple of months ago I was like, am I ever going to bring babies home? Like I do truly see it.
And I think you'll have that muscle memory, that body keeps the score, right? Like that body remembrance that you did carry her, and you carried her full term, and you birthed, and you can do that. Like you have done that. You can do that again. And so that's a really good thing that like your inner self will draw from, that knowing. And I know that a friend of mine who lost her first, who was stillborn, her fear was, her body didn't know anything different, and like, was their body capable, all those questions. And so everyone has their own like points that are really triggering and really self-doubt and the guilt and all of that. You're doing the PGT testing? All that stuff. And we can do all these things as a way to try and give ourselves that little bit of reassurance and hope, but the world's just so full of those unknowns, and that's what you're competing with.
I think that's the hard thing as well. Like, I had done all the possible testing for pregnancy. I went into that cesarean because she was breech, and she came out and she was unwell. And so I know, no matter how much healing and help I do before this point, I'm going to be anxious till 39 weeks, and I'm going to go into that cesarean scared as fuck. Because until they pull that baby out healthy and crying, Millie never cried, she never opened her eyes for 6 days, never heard her cry. Until I hear that cry, like, I'm going to be fucking scared. I know that. And I will see my psych every 2 weeks until that point. I won't stop that. And I'm thinking positive, and I see it, and I know I'm going to get it. But of course I'm petrified that the same thing will happen again. I get told 100%. She's perfect for 39 weeks and then not be the case. Like,
I know. I had to say to my obstetrician, like, I love you dearly, but you're not to ever use that word in this pregnancy. Find another word in your vocab. I know it just rolls off your tongue.
Just good would be fine. She's good. Perfect.
Looks good. Looks as they should. I don't want you telling me this baby looks perfect because it just makes me cry. Makes me cry every time. That's
so funny you had that same experience. I mean, because Dylan and I used to always come home from every appointment like, oh, she's perfect. Like, and I mean, they mean well. Like, we, she did in their eyes look perfect. So
So it's wild, and gosh, I don't even know how it feels like yesterday and so long ago all at the same time. It's like the longest year of your life, and I suppose a thing to prepare for is like this year, the year of having Otis with me, is like I can't fathom how fast the year has gone, and I know it's because it's jutted up against a year that felt like it went for 10 years. Like, time was the slowest, most painful thing through that pregnancy. And those final days, those final weeks, I was booked in for a planned cesarean with him. As much as I had no risk factors for why I couldn't have a vaginal birth, and that's what I'd had previously with both my babies. They'd both been uncomplicated birth besides the obvious. And my heart really, really wanted that. But I couldn't wrestle. I couldn't get my brain and my mind to accept risk.
Yeah.
And no matter how many times I wrote it out, and I did, pros and cons, all the risk for a C-section was to me, not to the baby, and all the risk, well, majority of the risk with a vaginal birth and unknowns was for the baby. And I didn't trust myself. I couldn't trust myself. I didn't trust my intuition. I didn't trust my body. And I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I have, I'd be lying if I said I didn't have some regret over that. But I know I did the best and made the best decision I could at the time.
Yeah.
C-section was very calm. I was, he was actually born a week earlier. I went in for like my third or fourth fucking CTG freak out. But I had a scary-ish one a few days prior, and then this was another one I'd gone in, and it was like first in the morning, and in fact my husband was really freaking out this time. He was having a bit of a panic attack, and I think my OB just looked at us and said, "You're going to have a baby today."
No.
I'm here.
Yeah.
My team's here. We're just going to get this baby out.
Yeah.
And so again, didn't have anything with us. Weren't prepared. My husband was able to drive home quickly and get the baby bag. That was done. By the time he got back, I was already in theatre. He just had to walk in, and it was on, and it was just so fast. So, yeah, C-section was good for us in that respect, that it was quick and you didn't have that long labour and a chance to have more intrusive thoughts and more anxiety and stress. And he is just complete sunshine. Oh my God.
Otis is the cutest name. I love it. Otis and Lottie, is that their name?
Yeah,
so cute.
So Lottie, Ada and Otis.
Yeah.
And they're my babies, and she'll always be mentioned in the same breath as them.
Of course.
But still no answers, and that's a big part of the message. I wish there was a way to get out to more people. I suppose it's a hard one for doctors to say without their clients getting upset because it's like, it sounds so unacceptable, right? But you can be third trimester, low risk pregnancy, no warning signs, no risk factors, and your baby can die. And that is really hard for anyone to sit with, I think.
I think though that it wouldn't take the shock away, because you're always shocked because you actually, even if you hear about it, you never think it's going to happen to you. But
totally,
my obstetrician,
but I was angry. Angry at that fact, right?
So my obstetrician has an Instagram, and he's quite vocal on it. He's very big on it. He does like a live on a Friday, and was live going just before he was going into Millie's birth, and had been like, "Hi guys, happy Friday! Like fun fact Friday. We've just done 4 cesareans. They're all boys." And then they were going in for mine. Millie was the 5th of the day, and it was a girl, and there was the first girl of the day. They were so excited, and he didn't go on his story again after that, after Millie's birth, and he didn't for the rest of the day, and I don't think he did the following week either. But nothing's ever been talked. Millie's never been acknowledged on his page or anything, and he celebrates every birth, every baby, everything. I know, and he apologized to me. He said, "I'm so sorry I haven't acknowledged Millie," and I said, "That's okay, but I thought it was going to come, and it never came." And I just thought,
do you know what?
That's a shame.
It's funny you say that, and it's different, but I don't know if your OB had this as well. I don't know, it's common where you go in for your appointments and they have like a wall of like baby photos and thank you cards that they display proudly. And I never mentioned it to him, but I'd sit there for my future of pal appointments staring at this wall. I called it like the living wall of babies that Ada wasn't on. And wondering, will this baby get to be
on that
on
wall.
the living wall? And I felt like it would be something I would do straight away. And then you know what? After he was born, I was like, no, Ada's not there.
Yeah.
You don't need to be there.
They don't have photos on this wall, but they have welcome to the world, and they put the name on there, and then the doctor the OB stands in front of it, and the couple holding their baby. And so Dylan had always talked about he couldn't wait to bring Millie in to be in front of the photo, right? And so we went in for our 4-week checkup post losing Millie, post-birth. And it was night because they'd squeezed us in, and the receptionists were about to go home. And as I sit down on the chair, Dylan points to the wall and it said, "Welcome to the world, Millie." And so they had done it for us. And so we burst into tears. But he didn't get in the photo with us, and we didn't even take the photo. Like none of us got in the. And so it was kind of like it was beautiful. It was so nice to have been honoured. And he gave us a little onesie that he gives all of his patients, like a little I was birthed by. And those things were beautiful, but it was kind of like it was still not acknowledged on the social media space. And I just think it's just if it is so common, why is it not talked about? And whereas
I don't think it's not enough to say, oh, like, I didn't want to upset you. Like, ask.
Yeah.
If you're worried about that, ask the parents, like, would you like me to do this? I'd love to do this. Is it okay with you?
And I was blasting it everywhere, and I was tagging all his team and him and everything. And he said, what he said was beautiful. He said, "I'm so sorry I haven't shared any of your things. I feel like it's like a fraud. I feel like he's got such..."
do it.
Yeah. I think he said, like, he feels like because he's got like
he is compassionate, right, when he's with you.
Yeah.
But
I think he felt like what did he call it? Like tall poppies? No, that wasn't the right word. But anyway, it was by like
I know what you mean.
Anyway, but
I don't know.
Was sad. I was sad that she was never honoured. I really was, and I know social media, who gives a fuck, but every other baby got acknowledged that month. Like they literally do a celebration of each of the babies born that month, and my baby was born and wasn't acknowledged.
If that's something they do, then that would upset me as well. For sure. I remember my obstetrician did I was waiting for it. So she was born on the 20th of September, and then it was the October's pregnancy and infant loss awareness, and it has a Instagram thing as well. And it was like a week into that week. I'd just learnt about it, obviously, but had started to follow some accounts and whatever, and I'd seen lots of posts, and I wasn't on there yet with my Ada page, but it got like a week in, and they hadn't posted anything about it. As you know, an obstetrics clinic that like heavily promotes about like P&D and mental health and postnatal depression, and it's kind of like, well, yes, like people whose babies die, we get postnatal depression too.
Yeah,
probably much more frequently. No post. And I remember like feeling upset about that, and fast forwarding here, they did, and they got better at that.
Okay.
But those types of things, like it's so clear to us the disconnect, and it's like missed opportunities.
Yeah. Right? And our fertility specialist, he's, they've got a social media platform as well, and they did this beautiful video for us and posted it and acknowledged Millie. And we didn't even fall pregnant with them because we didn't do IVF, but, we're heavily involved in their clinic through my endo, and they did a video, and he said to me, "Oh, did you send that video to Dr. Ong's office?" And I was like, no, they just made that for us. Like, they reached out and said, "Can we use these photos? We want to do something for you." And I know, and I was like, I felt so seen. Like, I felt like Millie mattered, medical, Yeah. It was
I know some people, hearing stories I've heard, the way some people are treated, I feel so deeply grateful and thankful for the care that I had with Ada and my subsequent pregnancy, because, gosh, I'm sure you have too heard just some corkers. That's not even the right word. But, you know, the two midwives that cared for us and Ada came to her funeral. The delivering obstetrician came to her funeral. And like that just was so meaningful. We didn't ask, like they offered.
Yeah,
they know that you're not even,
and it was
not even
beautiful.
thinking that. Yeah, it was so beautiful. We only had like our intimate family, and they were like really wanted to show the obstetrician who delivered Ada. She was born on a Monday. She didn't have a day off, I think, until the Wednesday or must have been the Thursday. She had a day off. So you know how busy they are. She works in the public system and private system, and it was her day off. And she came to my house and sat with us for I think nearly 2 hours.
Wow.
It's just amazing people. And so thankful. I can never thank those people enough for that kind of support. And I think it was probably about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months in where, so is that around where you are now? 5 months?
Yeah, 4 months, yeah.
So we ran from her death into Christmas, into New Year, and like getting through that, like around the 4 or 5 month mark, I was like a broken person. Like I felt like I was getting worse. I wasn't getting better. And I had this like deep need and urgency to like do something with my grief. And that's when so you know it as a website, but at the time when I first started doing it, it was a PDF kind of downloadable resource guide that I put together because I found in those early months I just spent so much time doom scrolling trying to find things that helped me. And in that process, yes, you find stuff that's great, but you also find stuff that's triggering and upsetting and not what you want to see, especially on social media, and then especially the podcasts. You know, I listened to a whole heap of podcasts that weren't great or weren't particularly helpful in search of ones that were. And so that's how that started with the resource guide, so I could somehow get that to other people in that early stage of grief so they didn't have to go searching. They just had this curated list of, you know, accounts to follow, podcasts to listen to, books to read, books for your kids, you know, and it just grew from there. And it was really cathartic for me to do. Like, you're obviously doing podcasts, which is amazing. And I guess that was my thing, and everyone's going to have their own thing. Might be knitting beanies for the NICU. It might be, you know, donating books, like whatever. I think everyone has to find some way to channel their grief. And
I love that. I think that's such a great idea because it's so true, and we don't know where to look, and so we just go to Google, or, you know, you might search a hashtag or something, but to have everything in one space is so lovely. And so what is your website?
I love that you www.lovefromada.com. And I love that you interviewed Crystal. I love Crystal. We lost our babies fairly close together. I know they were on Millie's birthday and Whittaker's birthday are the same, and I thought that was incredible. Crazy. And I remember chatting to Crystal a lot when she was creating her baby book, her baby loss journey, and that was something I was desperately looking for. Nothing existed. I couldn't find anything at that point for what I wanted. I had a baby book that I had bought for her before she died, and obviously it was
I've still got mine
completely. And I tried actually to fill it out, and then just got too upset, and it was too wrong. And I was just so excited for Crystal. She brought that out so quickly after her loss, and I was so inspired by what she was doing. I still am. And as soon as she released it, as soon as it was ready, I think I must have been one of the first orders. I still recommend it to so many people because it is beautiful. And it's one of my most treasured things. So I love seeing what other people do in the space, and that's not to say you have to do anything, and you definitely don't have to do it straight away. Like, I've just finished this website now, and I launched it just a few days after Ada's second birthday, so that's 2 years. So, yeah, people should definitely not be putting pressure on themselves or feel like they have to do things now.
Yeah, that's what I said in my podcast the other day. I said, because somebody said to me, one of the questions in the Q&A was like, are you going to start a foundation for Millie? And I said, look, knowing me, yeah, I probably will do something like that, and I'll continue the podcast, and I'm writing a book, and I'll do all these things. That's just me. It doesn't mean if anyone goes out and does, you know, the lady that created Bears of Hope, all the different things, nobody loves their baby anymore if they go do these things. It's,
Correct.
you know,
Correct.
whether you just say your baby's name or whether you plant a seed, whether you don't do anything. It's just people with different personalities.
And I've had a few people say similar things to me, and it's like, you know, if you feel called to do something, do it, of course, do for it. It's going to look different for everyone. It doesn't have to be a big grand gesture, and it's not taking away from those who are able to do that. That's wonderful. Mm-hmm. There's room for everyone to do those things. You know, and again, the time thing, from the minute I lost Ada, I had a willingness or a want to do memory boxes for the hospitals, but I just didn't have the capacity.
Yeah.
I wanted to make it the website, but through PAL, I didn't have the capacity. I was in the process of turning it into like a printed, like hard copy book.
Yeah.
And then, you know, for a myriad of reasons that didn't kind of work out or feel right, or I wasn't in the right space. And then, when the time was right, I was able to do the website. And, you know, so, people, you've got your whole life to love your baby.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you know, and if one day closer, I always come back to as well, that, you know, we'll be with them again.
Yeah.
When the time is meant to be. Hopefully no time soon from, you know, a life perspective. And we owe them, you know, for us to live our lives. But you never stop. Never stop wishing for them, that's for sure.
Yeah. So nice to hear your story, especially, you know, 2 years on, and not nice to hear your story, but you know what I mean. It's just nice to be in it with you, and, you know, to hear about her. And I love your rawness and vulnerability around the anxiety and the depression and the depths of the darkness and the grief, and, you know, how ugly pregnancy after loss looks, and, you know, that realness and rawness is so valuable.
Yeah, it is nothing if not messy, right? Grief and that pain, and get help. Honestly, like, reach out. It's scary. I remember being so scared to go to my first like in-person support meeting. I went to a Red Nose one maybe 2 months or so after Ada died. I was terrified, but like I knew I needed something, and I met a girl that night who had lost her son 4 days, I think, after Ada, and she's like one of my best friends now. We've had our PAL pregnancies a few weeks apart, so we've been on that journey together, had our babies a few weeks apart, and, you know, it's so invaluable to find people like that. You know, local people, a lot of people I've connected with have been interstate, and to have met her at that time, like, you know, something very special about that.
Was the Red Nose session like a free service, or?
Yep, free service. They have lots of online ones as well, but this was like an in-person group session, and I went to quite a few, and it just really served a purpose in those early stages. They are brilliant, and they're run by peer support workers who have also experienced loss, and then gone on to have training. And Red Nose has been amazing for me. And then, yes, I had the privilege of having private health insurance where I could, you know, access a psychologist that I saw regularly and all throughout my pregnancy. And I know it's much harder to get access to sites these days post-COVID if you're in the public system. So, you know, I know that that's a privilege. But just anything that you can get your hands on, like, take it and speak and talk. And, you know, I think as women, I know I don't like to generalise, not all women are the same, but I find we want to talk. We need to talk it out. My husband does not work the same way. He needed other things. But yeah, if you keep it all in, like, that is heavy and painful, and it just sprays out sideways.
Yeah.
But
how did
I'm sure we could talk forever.
I know. How did your husband's, we will wrap it up soon, how did your husband's grief journey go in terms of support? Like, you were able to... Yeah.
He very much needed the structure and the... like, he went back to work 3 weeks later because he needed to for his mental health, I think, whereas, like, there's no way.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't go back to work because I ended up falling pregnant, but I couldn't have, no way.
Yeah.
Whereas he needed to get on and do. I think men need to do things, and they're very, very avoidant, I think, in how they deal with things sometimes. And he still felt things really deeply, but found it really hard to talk about, found it really hard to be with those big feelings. They were very new to him. He'd not experienced anything anywhere close to this. He'd not lost anyone. So to go from experiencing virtually no loss in your life to this was very scary for him, but it just meant that we grieved very differently, and I couldn't get what I needed from him, and I had to learn that was okay.
Yeah.
I needed to seek it elsewhere. That was a journey to learn that.
I think that's a super important point, and it's something that I said a lot. So my husband went straight back to work as well, and I was able to grieve at home. I was on maternity leave from the government for 20 weeks, which was amazing. My husband went back to work because he wanted to get out of the house and stuff, but I only had the capacity to look after myself. And by looking after myself, I was not brushing my teeth, I was not having a shower, I was not eating, I wasn't doing anything, but I was breathing.
You were surviving.
I was literally breathing. That was my only job, and it's all I could handle. And I do a lot of our home admin. I'd make all the appointments, I'd sort the dogs and the blah, 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 blah. And he asked me to do something, and I said, I can't do that. I can't. Any of your appointments, it said, you need to go to the doctor, you need to see a psych, you need to get, he had to get bloods. I said, you just need to take care of you. And I've now taken back on that role a little bit to help, as a wife, and the things I enjoy doing for our home. But in that moment, I'll give anyone permission to just, if you're able to just take care of yourself, because you do not have the capacity to take care of anyone else. And I couldn't carry that. I'm like, you need to get better for yourself and for our marriage, and I need to get better for myself and our marriage, and we need to do it on our own for them, if that makes sense. And definitely, and he had to step up in a lot of ways, because I was just not, as you say, no capacity. I think I used the word selfish earlier, and I don't mean it as people would normally use that word. It's more just you have no capacity. You are just surviving, and staying alive was my priority. Because there were many days I did not want to wake up, and the minute I opened my eyes, you remember it all, and I'd cry, and just angry that the sun was even rising, angry that we were here, angry it was my life. I didn't want to. It's a hard one, right? It's not that I wanted to die, because I had my daughter to live for, I had my husband, I had a lot to live for, but I just didn't want to wake up. If I could have just been put to sleep for weeks, months, whatever, that probably wouldn't have worked anyway. But I just didn't want to be with that pain. You want to switch it off. I don't want to die, but I don't want to be here. I've said that many times.
And then when the pain, as you say, when you get to a point where you feel your capacity returning, sometimes that's like a grief in itself as well, because your pain turns into your connection to them in many ways. And that's a learning curve of, well, no, it's okay. It's okay for me to go and do this thing with my daughter. It's okay for me, for ages, if I laughed or smiled, I instantly felt guilty, and I'd stop myself. So it's just such a journey to go on. 2 years on, and my husband is only just taking the steps to get some help for himself. It's taken him that long. So he has a lot of unresolved grief.
Yeah.
I don't think that would be an unfamiliar story for people.
Yeah.
And whereas I have done a lot of work.
Yeah.
So, everyone's grief journey is different. Their timeline's going to be different.
Yeah.
And that's okay, as long as we both have a willingness to stick it out and support each other as best you can. You just keep going.
Yeah. That's so powerful because, a lot of, and it's not necessarily male, female, mum, dad, whatever. It's we all grieve differently, and some people want to go get the help straight away and some don't. And what I've been told the whole time from all the doctors and professionals is the grief will hit you eventually, so you need to unpack it at some stage. So it's either now or it's later. And I
tell you what, from a power perspective, because I'd done all that work, even a surprise to myself, I was very calm at Otis's birth. Weirdly calm, despite all the intense fear and anxiety leading up to it. And the relief afterwards, it just overtook any other emotion, and you couldn't wipe the smile off my face. It's like a light flick switch and I was a different person. Whereas my husband was a complete mess in the C-section.
Really?
Yes, he was. And funnily enough, my obstetrician's actually an anaesthetist as well.
Yeah.
And whether he predicted this would be the situation, I think so. He had a colleague actually do the C-section, and he scrubbed in as the anaesthetist, so he could pretty much hold my husband's hand and be with him, knowing that he wouldn't have the capacity to support me because his grief was going to explode.
Wow.
And then, through the first few months of Otis's life, he had a lot of panic attacks, had quite a lot of, eventually admitted to having a lot of intrusive thoughts. I had some of those too through those first few months, but my husband definitely struggled more with it. It's that saying that the grief will find a way, and it will come out in ways you're not expecting because you haven't dealt with it.
This is a real. Let
that be a lesson to the men out there.
No, it's really powerful. It's really powerful, and because I was told that when we first lost Millie, I was like, okay, we're doing IVF, we've got to, and they were like, you need to relax a second, and I was like, it's not going to replace Millie, but I just need to do it, and they were like, no, it won't replace her, but you need to grieve first, and in my head I was like, yeah, but I'll always be grieving, and they said, yeah, you will, but you need to go through these stages first, and I didn't understand it. And now 4 months on, I'm like, okay, I am doing the work. I'm doing a lot of work, and I am feeling lighter. And I had a really dark week last week, so I'm saying this in a really light week. But it's, I'm glad hearing that from you, that you went into the Caesar relaxed and calm, because I prayed for that. I'm so scared for that day. And Dylan did start seeing a psych last week, and so I'm super stoked that, we're 4 months in.
Huge. That's huge. Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And, I wish I couldn't have made him do it any sooner.
No, that's right. Yeah, we can't make anyone do it.
And, would things have been easier, maybe different, if we had both been doing that work together? Maybe, but it wasn't to be. And the fact that he's taking those steps now, I'm really proud of him. And I guess just for any mums out there who are maybe in that same boat where they feel that their partner isn't able to support them how they want, or isn't getting the help that they think their partner needs, not all is lost, I guess.
Yeah.
I think we want to get that support from our partner. That's what we want. That's maybe how it's always been. But I think my psych explained it, that generally when you go through a traumatic thing, generally it's maybe happening mostly to one partner. So say you're in a relationship and maybe your mother dies. Yes, your partner is affected by that, but it's not their mother, and they're able to really swoop in and hold you and fill you up and help you regulate. And vice versa, if it's me and maybe my husband has that loss, I'm able to come over and help him regulate and step up. But when you lose a child, like, you're both at capacity. You both have no ability to help each other regulate. You need the help. And so, you have to look outwards for that support, whether it's your parents or your friends or a therapist or multiple things. There's a period where you can't get that from each other to the level you need it. Or you need different things, and, like, that's hard, and you can get really angry at each other, but you eventually learn that just because you need different things, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Like, he needed to see his friends. He needed to get out of the house. I did not want to leave the house. I did not want to see friends for a good while, or it was only particular ones. So very different.
Yeah.
So, of course, that was going to cause some problems for a while. But, yeah, you just work it out slowly.
That's amazing.
And,
this is,
yeah. And, we're doing better for sure. And, again, we're not perfect. No one can be. But if you both still have that willingness and that knowing that this is a season we're in, and obviously we're in the season of young children too, and we just have a commitment not to give up on each other, and know that our time as a couple will come again when our children sleep. And just holding on to that when times are tough, just going, we just got to power through, enjoy it as much as we can, and the other parts will come back when they're ready.
Yeah, I'm so glad he's getting the help now. And
me too.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry everything's been so hard.
Yeah. But no, we've got a lot to be grateful for as well. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, I think
very lucky.
I think that message at the end was just like a perfect. A lot of the episodes we talk about, ways people can help and all that, but we talk about it so much, and I just think that topic that you just spoke of then about getting help now or getting help later, and the effects it has on two different people. That's just perfect, brilliant. Thank you so much, and that's
thanks for having me.
It's a very open thing to talk about. So thank you. I already can think of people I need to send this to. Do you know what I mean? Honestly, yeah.
Well, I hope it's, I have a tendency to waffle, so I hope it's not too waffly. I know you said you don't edit, so...
There's no editing. Not even the bit about me trying to find the fan remote.
No, so, hopefully there's someone out there who gets something from it, and if there's anyone who's new to their grief and they're struggling to find ways to help themselves, please have a look at the website, share the website.
Yeah.
There's so many resources there, and that's my struggle, is how I get it to people who need it. That's what I needed early on. Good for anyone, but early on is, if someone had given me that website early on, it would have saved me from a lot of triggers and stress and all that energy that's required. So,
well, you send me a message with all of your links and your Instagram and all the things and ways people can find you, and we'll pop them in the show notes, and I have absolutely no doubt people will reach out to you.
Yeah, wonderful. And thank you for doing what you're doing, and thank you to Millie, because without Millie, this wouldn't be happening. So, it's her legacy, and she'd be so proud of you.
Absolutely.
So I look forward to watching your journey continue as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Sending you so much love. And I know that little Ada and Millie are dancing in heaven right now. I always say that. Yes. I just love it. I'm like, can you just imagine them? One more thing. I had a little realization the other day, and I was sitting in the doctor's surgery, and it was when I was going in for my anaesthetist, and I had this thought, as maybe some people do, like, what if I die on the table, right? And I was like, I'd be in heaven. And then I'd be like, that would be so beautiful. And then I'd be like, I'd be looking down. And then I was like, but wait, Dylan and my family would be sad. And then I imagined myself like screaming out to them, like, I'm okay, I'm happy, this is so good. And so then it made me think of Millie, like yelling out to us, going, I'm so happy, I'm good.
I need to send you something. It is exactly that. I will send it to you. You will cry.
Okay.
I cry every time I read it. I will send it to you.
Okay.
It's beautiful.
Okay.
On that note.
All right.
We'll say
on that note.
I'll send it to you.
Okay. Sounds good. And if it's good, we'll post it somewhere. Is it something we can post on, like...
Yeah, you can share it. Yeah,
okay.
It's just different to anything else I normally read or share, like the language of it, but it gets me in the feels big time. And
because everyone will be listening to this podcast going, well, what was it? I want to see it.
It's on that kind of that note. So, okay, I'll send it to you now.
All right. Thanks, beautiful.
All right.
Chat soon. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Little Life, Big Loss. If you are here because you have experienced baby loss recently or a long time ago, I'm so sorry. I know this pain will never go away. My heart breaks with you. This is a pain no one ever expects to endure. Or maybe you are listening because you have just found out your baby is unwell in utero, and now you have some really hard-hitting decisions to make. I am, again, so sorry. These are decisions no parent should ever have to make. I hope these podcasts can lighten the load just a little bit in ways to help understand what the road ahead might look like and what your options are. Remember, you always have options. It is your body and your baby. If you have never experienced the loss of a baby and you are here to learn, thank you. We want to be heard and listened to. You will help someone somewhere with the knowledge taken from these podcasts. If any of today's conversation has triggered any uneasy emotions for you, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14 or lifeline.org, another organisation working specifically with pre- and postnatal depression and anxiety is Panda. You can find them at panda.org.au. And remember, postnatal depression and anxiety does not discriminate. It can affect both men and women, mums and dads. Please seek help from your GP, a psychologist, your local hospital, a midwife, obstetrician, Lifeline, or Panda. Thank you again for listening. I love you and miss you, my Millie.